Hi everybody and welcome to another live flight time session here with me, Peter Driver, in Kilkenny. I hope everybody's keeping well. Hope everyone can hear me okay. How you doing, Neil Hamilton? Norman's on there from Wales. Graham Lonigan, good to have you on there. Yano's on there. Robert Flaherty, Peter Wadding. How you doing, Aidan Gill? Kieran Sherlock, Declan Noonan, Dave Donovan's on with us there. Folks, don't forget Dave will be along with his trivia quiz in a little while. We've got a great gift pack there to give away tonight. Anthony Bolton's on there from Rathdrum and County Wicklow. How you doing, Anthony? Thomas Ankertel, Dave Hannaford, Martin Kenny, Michael Callaghan, Michael McGovern from New York, Dylan Roberts from Wales, Paul Burke is on there, John Kelleher. Another Saturday night, John, absolutely. Is she, yeah? Brendan Spillane, Graham Reggie is on there, Jamie Conway, Kevin Marr, Patrick Burke, Neil Hamilton, you're all on there. Steve Livington, how you doing? Chris Oliver, good evening everyone, and I hope everybody is keeping well. Can everybody hear me okay? How you doing, Donald Rafferty? So tonight's all about the Avonmore River, folks. It's the river. Adrian Codd, how you doing, Adrian? Hope you're keeping well. Yeah, no. Tonight's all about the Avonmore River, okay? And I got a little nymph in the voice there in a minute, and I'll explain that to you as well. But just before we get into it, I wish everyone the best of luck tomorrow that's fishing the Taffy Banks. The Leinster Taffy Banks are on Laois Angling Centre tomorrow. I'll be over there myself, and we'll have loads of updates on the Piscari Fly page if anyone wants to check it out during the day. Hi to all our YouTubers tomorrow. This stream will be up on YouTube tomorrow. And don't forget, if you need any fly time gear or fly fishing gear, check out www.piscarifly.com. Hope everyone's having a great evening. How you doing, Shane Bird? Hope everyone's had a good week. I'm a little bit hoarse at the moment. I've got a bit of a nasal thing going on. So it's all this mild, wet weather. So my voice is not as clear tonight as it normally is. So we got a fantastic show lined up for you tonight, you guys. I really love doing a show like this. It's all about the Avonmore River. You know, it's been my home river. It's been my home river. It is my home river, I should say. It's where I grew up. I grew up on the banks of the Avonmore. I spent my entire childhood fishing that river. You know, a fantastic club there, Rathdrum Trout Anglers. They've hosted many great competitions, many great social events. You know, it's been a club that's been running since, I think, the 60s or 70s. Lots of fantastic anglers stemmed from that club over the years. The likes of John Kelly, Jimmy Kelly, John Keogh, Pat Denton, Colin Driver, Noel Shields, etc., etc. So the list goes on. Fantastic anglers, great guys that, you know, really helped. How you doing? Dave Porter's on was there. Richie Gallagher's on as well. You know, great river, and there's some great history there with that club. Not just from my memories, but from competitions and stuff like that. So tonight we decided we'll go back and have a look at the 5 All-Irelands that were hosted on that river. So we got some great interviews for you tonight. We got the 91. We're going to start off by looking at the 91 championships. First, probably national championships held in Leinster. And the first Leinster man to win the national championships, of course, was my dad. He won in 91. Dad is going to be along later on in a little interview talking about fishing the Avonmore River back in the 60s and 70s, fishing with a lot of his colleagues, some I previously mentioned. And how you doing, Cyril? How you, Grode? How you, Tony Rooney? But also, we have the 2014 champion on with us as well. Eamon Conway will be along as well, talking about his famous win on the Avonmore River in the Interpro National Championships in 2016. He won it. So I was lucky enough to pick up a win this year. The championships was held on the Avonmore back in July, August, I think it was, and I was lucky enough to pick up a win. So we're going to try some of those flies that worked really well for me. We're also going to try one of the flies that worked really well for Dad back when he won it in 91. And we're going to have a good look at the river, and hope he's really enjoyed the show. So we have quite a bit to get through tonight, folks. Okay, so we might run a bit over. But before we start, for anyone that doesn't know the Avonmore River, it's a very unique piece of water. You know, it stretches the whole way from Glendalough right down through the whole valley of Wicklow, right down into Avoca, and enters the Sea of Arklow. An absolutely magnificent river. If you've never seen it, it is probably, without a doubt, and I've fished rivers all over the world, and there is nothing that captivates me like the Avonmore River. It is a magnificent river, beautiful river, and very difficult fishing, but there is a lot of good trout there to be caught. But I think, you know, the fishing sometimes comes second to that river because of the scenery and the spectacular that it is. Say I grew up on it, and I grew up on it, and it was a fantastic, magical childhood growing up on that river. But before we start, for anyone that's not overly familiar with the Avonmore River, I have a little slideshow here done on the Avonmore itself, just to give you a bit of an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about the beauty of this river that flows down through Wicklow. So have a look at this one here, folks. When we come back then, we're going to get into a bit of fly tying and then move on through the night, heading through those All-Ireland Championships. So watch this there now for a minute, and I'll see you back in a moment. So what a beautiful river. That's the Avonmore River in a quick snapshot, folks. You can see all those lovely runs and rapids and holes and pockets and lots of trees, lots and lots of trees. There's trees everywhere, and it doesn't run through agricultural land, the Avonmore. Very, very little of its banks will touch agricultural land, which makes it very unique. It all runs through forestry, a lot of it hardwoods. The upper stretches, up near Glendalough and stuff, like how you doing, Lucas, how you doing, John Johnson? Up on the upper stretches, you do have a bit of pine forestation, but the majority of the river does run through forestry and valleys and gorges. An absolute spectacular river. A very unique river, even in the kind of the trout that are there. I'm not sure if you've noticed, looking at some of them trout. Now, there is a very small run of trout, breed of trout that live in the Avonmore. Now, I have seen fish, I have seen quite large fish come out of that. I know Alan Byrne got a fish there going back way years ago. I saw it. It was definitely 5 to 6 pound. Caught on minnow, I think, at night in some of those big, deep, dark black holes. It was black as the ace of spades. But, so there is some big trout there. It does get a bit of sea trout and a bit of salmon. But it's a magnificent river. But if you notice those trout, the size of their eyes, there's something about the ratrum trout. Their eyes are so big, they're hungry fish, they're always hunting, they miss nothing, and that's part of the key of when you're approaching a river like the Avonmore, and you see trout with those big, they're very, very predator or hunting, they're real hunters. They forage hard for the food because the acidity levels in the Avonmore are so high. The food growth there is very sparse. So, you don't get any of the big massive hatches. How you doing, Jared? You don't get any of the big massive hatches that you would have in other rivers in the Midlands and softer water. So the trout, they're very opportunistic. They don't miss a chance. And if you give them the opportunity to take an info, then you will get some results out of it. And that kind of leads into what I was fishing when it comes to my All-Ireland. We're going to start off now and tie one of those flies, not this perdigon. So perdigons can work quite well on the likes of the Avonmore because of the deep pockets that lie between the stones. They can be super effective. I forgot to turn the sound off my phone. But they can be super effective in the pockets and stuff like that. And they do work quite well. And there's a typical perdigon that, I would expect to take a couple of trout on in the Avonmore. For the particular championships that we fished a couple of months ago, it wasn't the flies of choice I ended up using coming into Dave. Dave is on there, folks. The question will be coming out soon because he has to take. Rita wants to go for a bag of chips, so Dave will be on there with the question soon. So don't miss that one. We got a real nice lucky bag there for someone. Yano won the bag from last week. Congratulations, Yano. But when I was kind of preparing for the All-Ireland, I was up there a couple of times practicing, getting fish on pheasant tails, getting fish on hare's ears, getting fish on, a variety of your standard stuff, and kind of coming a bit more into the championships, and especially the 3 days I was up there prior, pegging the river. It takes 2 days to peg that river. Myself, Mark, and of course Ricky Croak and Stuart McGrain pegged the river for the championships. 2 full days of walking the river. It's quite a vast piece of water. I was looking at the river, looking at some of the fly life that was knocking about. We practiced a bit on the Ockram River, and I decided on a technique, and my game plan was going to be fish large flies. I wasn't going to go small. I decided not to go small. I decided to stick with large grub patterns, big caddis patterns and stuff like that, 3.5 and 3 mils, and fish them in the shallow waters. And literally, once I make contact with the bed of the river, I just drag it back along, keep in contact, and stop those nymphs from sinking down in between the stones. But my whole theory was that these are hungry trout. It's coming into the autumn, and you can see, we noticed the size of the eyes on hi Hugh. Yeah, a little bit Hugh, just a little bit bunged up a little bit, but I'm okay. I'll get through it. So I decided that these are hungry trout. It's coming into the autumn season. They're getting ready for migration. If I give them the opportunity to take a decent lump of a fly, they're not going to pass it up, especially the bigger trout. And the last thing you want to be doing catching in All-Ireland is small fish undersized. Okay, so I stuck with the 3.5 mils and 3 mils and quite long shanked, big bushy flies, and it paid off. It paid off, got my fish, and mostly keepers. I didn't have too many that were undersized. So in here I got a size 14 Haku G Cook, and I got a 3.5 mil. Absolutely, Kevin. Yeah, the mining down in the lower part down near Avoca is destroyed that river in the lower sections. The upper sections are still quite productive and hold a lot of trout. So I got a size 14 Haku G Cook here in the vise, and I got a 3.5 mil copper slot tungsten bead on it. And as you can see, I'm just putting on a bit of green chartreuse UV reflective tying thread. Don't forget, folks, you can win all these flies tonight if you hit that share button. Don't forget to hit that share button on the stream or send in a comment, and you'll get to win all these flies that I'm tying tonight, and a few that I would have tied earlier on. So as you can see, I just lapped the tag end back over my tag. So that's to secure that tag in to make sure it doesn't slip down the hook when I'm tying on the rest of the fly. And I'm going to finish that off and take away that. So I have a little orange tag there tied on the bottom of my hook, bottom of my fly. Then I'm going to switch over to my Kevlar thread. And I'm going to attach that onto the hook and bring it down over that tag just to secure it in. Now I've been fishing competitions in Rathdrum since I fished my first All-Ireland there in 2004. But it's a really social, active club. They've always got lots of, they always had great club competitions over the years on that river. And hare's ears were always productive there. Pheasant tails, yeah, they can be okay, but for me it was always hare's ears. Hare's ear grubs, hare's ear caddis was always the most productive kind of style of fly. And for the simple reason, say they're hungry trout, they like a feed. Okay, now I'm going to add in a little bit of grey partridge there just as a tail. And secure that in well. Now, key to fishing the Avonmore is contact. Contact to those nymphs. Contact to those nymphs. Because once you get it, the key to the Avonmore is fishing your nymphs on the bottom, but not in the bottom. Okay, so once I get my nymph down to the level I want it to be, down to where the trout are in that hole or whatever, I contact straight away. Get the drag them faster than the current, and that'll stop the nymphs from sinking. Okay, so they're not going to filter down and get in between those rocks. Now, it's not 100% foolproof, okay, but it helps. So I'm not going to let those, because there's an awful lot of boulders, and if those nymphs get in between those boulders, you're cracking off, okay? It's going to damage your tippet, it's going to lock in those nymphs into the bed of the river, and you're either going to have to go in and fish them out, or you're going to break off, okay? So I tend to, once I get the nymph down to the position where I want it to be, on the bottom, but not in the bottom, I then get the contact, and I drag those nymphs out there quite fast. When I was fishing the Avonmore at this year's All-Ireland, most of my casts weren't lasting any more than 4 seconds. So as soon as my nymph hit the water, I made contact, and then I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, strike out the back, and make another cast again. Okay, so very rarely, how you doing, Alan Noel Kelly? Good to have you on. Very rarely I got stuck in the bottom. Now I did a couple of times, but I was fishing for an awful for most of my sessions. There were 2-3 hour long sessions in this year's championships. And now what I put in there for my rib is the Gutterman Sulky. You can see it there. Okay, it's a copper Gutterman Sulky. You all know it. I've used it quite a few times on my hare's ears. Lovely ribbon material. Picked it up in a sewing shop a good few years ago. How you doing, Frankie Brannigan? Picked it up in a sewing shop a good few years ago. Very hard to get that particular colour now, but you can get some stuff close to it, but it is quite good. And I love it on hare's ears rather than a wire because it doesn't sink into the hare's ear as much as a wire would. And it's still highly visible once the fly is tied and it gets wet. It'll actually come out, penetrate lovely out through the dubbin. It doesn't sit into the dubbin, it sits more on the dubbin, okay? So, going to just wind up my hare's ear up the body. So, keep in contact with those nymphs. Stop them from getting into the bottom while they're on the bottom, is a key to just being effective fishing. Going to wind that up. A little bit of natural hare's ear on the body there. Wind up 6 to 7 or 8, even 8 turns up that body. Don't forget, folks, how you doing, Dalty? If you have any questions or anything, there, shoot them across. Shoot them across on the stream there, and I'll get to them if I can. So once I've got the tide, and I'm going to brush that out a little bit, just to get that hair out to make that nice caddisy, scruffy looking. This is one of the flies that got me quite a nice few trout. How you doing, James? James Murphy O'Connor's on with us there from County Cork. Now, for the thorax here, I got a bit of squirrel dubbin mixed with UV squirrel dubbin, as you can see. And I'm just going to add a pinch of that in up there near the collar, as a collar on this fly. Be generous enough. If I was tying that for some of the Midland rivers, I might tie it a bit slimmer, a bit sleeker. But for the Avonmore, and particularly for the All-Ireland that went by, I wanted to give them a bit of meat. As I was saying to people beforehand, you got a lot of phone calls, people saying, what are you going to do in the Avonmore, what's working? And I said, don't forget, these are hungry trout. They want something to eat. It was awesome time. And giving them something to eat will certainly help you make catches. And not only make catches, but the better trout will come and take it. Okay? Simple hare's ear nymph like that was one of my top nymphs in the All-Ireland Championships gone by. How you doing, Kieran Flynn? One of the top nymphs in the Championships gone by. Very effective on the likes of the Avonmore. Those kind of stony, rocky, pooly rivers. Good heavy bead, good size nymph. And will definitely take you. Will definitely take plenty of trout for anyone that's planning to go up to the Avonmore next season and give it a fish. I wouldn't go to the Avonmore without those hare's ear caddis. Okay, really class nymph. There's one fly. I'm going to be tying a couple of more flies. I've got a whole list of pointers here tonight because we got so many people on with us and we got so many things I want to show you about. And I say talking about the Avonmore River, not just the Avonmore River itself, but the All-Ireland Championships that were held in that river. It's held 5 over the years in total. Sherry, I don't think so. No. There's no plans for that. Okay, so I think Dave has asked his question there, folks. How many bridges cross the Avonmore River? A little bit of a question there. I know the answer. How many bridges are on the Avonmore from Inchamore to the Avoca River? Okay, so how many bridges are on? First correct answer in there will win themselves a lovely lucky bag here. Got a hair full of a load of goodies. Graham, you might be a bit off with the 756. But Dave will let me know who was the correct answer there. Dave, you might let me know as soon as someone hits that correct answer. How many bridges cross the Avonmore River? What a beautiful bridge. And by the way, if anyone has ever taken the train from Dublin to Arklow, once you hit that Wicklow, Rathdrum area, it's spectacular. Or even the train ride from Rathdrum down to Arklow. It's a beautiful train ride. It's a beautiful train ride down along there. But so anyway, yeah, so they've held 5 All-Irelands over the years, and it's a fantastic club. I said, it was always a very good active club, and we're going to just take a little peek back, say, to the 91 All-Ireland held in Rathdrum. As far as I can remember or found out, it was the first Taffy interprovincial All-Ireland held in Leinster. Back in the summer of 91. It was based out in Avondale, There was a video of it. I don't have the video. I have seen it. It's fantastic. It's kind of hard to get your hands on some old stuff like that. But there is a video of it somewhere. I'll always try and keep trying to get my hands on it. But Tom Ankertel came on and sent us some lovely pictures of some of the, not that slideshow here, the next slideshow, this one here, of the brochure that was made for the All-Ireland final in Rathdrum that year. Terry Willers was another great member of the Rathdrum Trout Anglers. And Terry Willers was a famous cartoonist. He worked noticeably for the Evening Herald. Would have done a lot of cartoons, and you can see his artwork there. That was the brochure, the dinner brochure after the All-Ireland Championships, of when the anglers came back to Avondale House for their dinner, and he done a cartoonist. He also did a cartoon show in Jacobs that night for all the anglers as entertainment. You'll also see the Taffy Interpro medal there. Munsters were the champions of Munster were the champions of the Interpro Championships that year. They won it, and it was a Munster man that came second as well, John Daly from Claheen. We have a winner. Alan Noel Kelly has won. Alan Noel Kelly has won there, and 14. Correct, Alan Noel Kelly. I'll be on to you tomorrow, Alan, to get that package off to you Monday morning. Well done. There is 14 bridges crossing the Avonmore from Inchmore River, which is where the river rises up in Trooperstown, down as far as the Meetings of the Waters, which is the end of the Avonmore, where the Avoca River begins, where the Meetings of the Waters, where Thomas Moore wrote his famous poem. And there is 14 bridges between there and the Inchmore River. Spectacular, including train bridges, foot bridges, and road bridges. But where was it? Yeah, so second place was John Daly from Claheen in County Tipperary. Third place was Dennis Berry from Mallow in County Cork. It was a fabulous All-Ireland, and it went on to be talked about for quite some time, and still some anglers will talk about the likes of the All-Ireland from the 91. But the winner on the day was Tom Driver, my dad. He was the first Leinster man to win a Taffy Interprovincial Championships. And I caught up with Dad during the week for a little bit of a chat, not only about that All-Ireland win, but the Avonmore in general, and what the river was like back in the 50s, not that old, the 60s and the 70s. And here we go. I'm going to stick on this interview for you folks. I'm going to come back, and we're going to be tying one of the flies that Dad mentions here that won his All-Ireland Championships back in 91. But enjoy this, folks, and I'll see you back in a few moments. So thanks, Dad, for joining us here on the show tonight. Great to have you on the show here with us. We're looking back at the Avonmore. We're looking back at the 5 All-Irelands the Avonmore held. And I know you've been part of that river and part of that club for the majority of your 70-odd years. Before we go into the whole 91 All-Ireland victory that you took, great achievement for any angler, but I suppose at that time it was you were the first Leinster angler to take an All-Ireland Interpro at that time. But before we talk about that, just looking back at your earliest memories of the Avonmore River, say, the 90s, heading back to the 60s and 70s especially, because I know you've told me loads of stories about this over the years, the river in the 60s and 70s and your fishing experiences there. What sort of is the earliest memories of the river, and what sort of fishing did you have back then on the Avonmore River?
Yeah, well, I can remember the first day I went to the river with a fly rod.
Right.
And I got a ton of quarter-pound trout, brown trout out of it. And the same morning was Saturday morning, around 11 o'clock, I'll never forget it. I can still see it. I was fishing upriver up into this run that was coming down into a pool, really sandy pool.
Where were you?
Under Avondale.
Right.
And I got a fabulous big golden brown trout. And I had a little spinning rod with me that morning as well, because it was the first day I ever went down the river without a bloody hazel rod and a lump of line on it, worm fishing. And after that, caught that trout, that was the end of worm fishing for me. I never worm fished after, and that's true.
No one ever showed you how to fly fish. There was no one else in the family. Just something you took up.
I learned myself, and I learned fishing up into the stream and just raising the rod to keep the fly in the water coming down the.
Wet fly fishing.
Wet fly fishing, and you
upstream.
Upstream, and you get them every time.
Right.
If they were there to be up high in the water, they were feeding on everything that was coming down. And the same morning I went on down to Mannon's Hole. It was Lord of Mercy and Column used to fish there.
That's right.
And behind this great big rock, a massive big salmon come up. And I was sitting on the little seat at the bank. There was no lip on the river, and there was a flood in the river as well. And I couldn't have tried my best to get out to him, and I couldn't get out to him. And they were both Wellicans. I had waders to were in bits, and I couldn't get out to get a cast on him. And he come up the second time to show himself after me, and he was a magnificent fish. I've never seen anything like him. I've told thousands of stories about him to everyone. When they'd asked me about salmon in the Upper River, but that was a salmon to be seen. Like he was 4 foot in length.
Gee.
Yeah, he was 15, 16 pounds of cubby bower, fabulous salmon.
And there was good trout in the Avonmore back then.
Jeez, God almighty, So
what kind of a river was it to fish? Is it as slippy as most people that fish the Avonmore today? Most of our viewers would know the Avonmore is a very slippery, very difficult river. Back in the 60s and 70s, was that still the same?
It mightn't be quite as bad, but the over I seen that salmon that morning, that was my favourite stretch from that pool back up.
Yeah, fabulous piece of water.
There's massive big rocks there.
Yeah.
And I used to get behind them.
You've been there a millennium.
Yeah, and I'd be hiding behind them, and I'd be flicking the flies up the Wild River, and you'd take trout with good brown pound trout,
Right.
That was fabulous. All up there to the bridge, and you could catch any amount of trout.
Right.
All up on the bridge, up on the
What sort of flies were you fishing?
Just, well, it was mostly wet flies, because I used to get all my flies off of John Ansley in Arklow. He had a hardware shop in Arklow.
Was he a fly tire?
He wasn't a fly tire, but he was a great fly fisherman.
Right.
And he used to fly fish with Harry Saul of Rathrum, which had a hardware and a drapery shop in all in Rathrum. And Harry used to do an awful lot of fishing. A terrible nice man.
Where was his drapery shop?
Where Lily Carl's is now.
Oh, right.
That used to be Harry Saul's place there.
Right.
Yeah. Harry was a big, tall gentleman.
Did he sell flies there, or was just...
He sold a few owl flies.
Right.
Yeah. But I used to always go into John Ansley. I'd get a lift in, or I'd go in on the bus or the train. And I'd go down to John Ansley. And he'd say, where are you going fishing, Tom? And I said, I'm going to the Avonmore. And he'd always recommend the fly to me.
Right.
But all the flies we used to get that time was size 12s.
Go ahead.
They're massive yokes.
And what sort of patterns were you fishing back then?
Greenwell's lorries, red spinners. It was about 8 flies, that's all we used to use on the river.
Right.
8 well-known flies to watch it off.
Yeah.
And you see, I used to walk down the railway to the river at night, and I was night fishing. And I'd now coming down at the railway, looking up at the air, see the flies over me, I know what was going to be on.
Yeah.
And it was fabulous. Fabulous fishing.
And you often told me stories. I often remember, sitting around and after shooting things like that or fishing, and you tell a great story about fishing with your good friend Christy Byrne.
Christy Byrne, yeah.
And if you can remember that story about Christy and the double flies.
Yeah, actually all you'd see Christy, he'd be casting, and all you'd see is lumps of bushes coming through the air at you, because he used to let the arm go back and he'd let the line drop, and then he'd pull it and he'd rip every bush that in the ditch out. And he'd break, Jesus, Tom, I'm at the break another one of your flies. I said, that's no matter. I said, I took the half fly and I'll give him another one. And then when it come dark at night, then I used to bind the two of them together, one on top of the other, and the one with the hook in it would be underneath.
Right.
And boy, I got some great trout on that.
Go away.
It was like a hatching fly going down the river, sitting up on the water. And I used to keep a tight check on the line, go down the line, follow you down the line. And every time you get them, that burst of a big trout. Yeah, it was amazing how it worked.
I honestly can't say there's a fly in my head, and I don't forget flies. I remember every fly I see or event or whatever. There's not a fly in my head to imitate that, a double fly, one on top of the other. And I remember you telling me stories about it, and I've often thought about it. But it's amazing.
I used to get a lump of light line, and I'd bind what was left of the hook underneath, and I'd bring it up there to tie off the head.
Go ahead.
Half each knot, and tie her up there to let her on. Yeah.
Amazing.
I used to fish the hard running water, keep her on top of the water the whole way down the lot.
Right.
I'd never get nothing on the flat water.
Just broken ripples.
Yeah, you just had to keep it moving on the rippling water. I got there up above the runs there below the mill. It was a fabulous place.
And what's the sort of best trout you remember from back in those days that were coming off the river? Or what was the best kind of areas for trout where you see a couple of big trout?
Jeez, I don't think there was a bad area on it.
Right.
And I tell you, the upriver, Peter, that time, it was a certain stretch of river, upriver, under the factory there.
The cops.
Under the cops, yeah. And the cops had nothing to do with it. But there was a stretch of water up along there. And God, lads used to take fabulous trout.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole river was full of great trout that time.
It's
60s and
big,
70s.
deep holes there, full of big trout, like.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But I often remember you telling me stories now, and unfortunately I was never old enough to remember. I've seen a few photographs of the old mill in Rathdrum, a famous building. You can't come into Rathdrum without seeing the old mill. A magnificent building, but I often heard of the old mill race.
Yeah, the old mill race.
And the quality of trout that used to sit around that.
Yeah, the quality of the trout and the quality of the rats that was in it.
I remember the rats. The rats. But talking about the trout there, you know, what sort of memories of trout would you have had around the old mill growing up?
I should have no bother looking in, Peter, that time, and I'm telling the truth, there was no bother looking in and seeing 50 2-pound trout.
Go away.
They're feeding after, and then turning it up onto the surface.
Feeding off the sweepings, or?
Yeah, feeding off the sweepings, or midges or flies that be coming down.
Go away.
Coming down through the tunnel where the big wheel was. And just come down through that and then on down the mill race.
And you'd be feeding off the barley and the corn and coming out of the mill, like.
Yeah.
And fattening themselves up.
It was unbelievable. And then when you go on down to the end of that river, then the water that's coming out there come down through our home place.
And through Glasnarget.
Through Glasnarget and out the where I have the pond now.
That's right, yeah.
That water comes all the way down and out there at that river.
That's right, I know.
And we used to sit there at that river the day of a flood, and we'd sit there all day as chaps, pulling through one after another.
Go away.
Big as you like.
Jeekers,
Yeah.
The river's changed. Like, it has changed an awful lot over the years, even in my lifetime. And you know, there's always romanticism with old memories and stuff like that. But I definitely know it has changed. But yet the river has never changed in face, because it's such an old river. Like it's set in stone.
It's set in stone. Like
a beautiful river.
Never change.
But moving on, moving on now to kind of heading up towards the 90s. You know, fishing a few competitions. When was the sort of first competitions held on the Avonmore, club-wise, or when did the club start on the Avonmore?
The club was started on Avonmore in the late 60s.
Right.
It could be the mid-60s, the late 60s. You know, Jimmy Kelly and Vincent Byrne of the station.
Yeah.
Vincent was never a flyman.
He was a great clubman, though.
He was a great clubman, and he was a great man with the spinning.
Yeah.
Because I used to be down under Avondale that time, and I'd be eating under the trees, flicking me little fly, and next thing this bloody big Beps had hopped down beside you. I often felt like catching it and pulling it and weak into the water, because he was forever doing it, you know.
I can remember Vincent in my early days.
He was a superman at that. But there was Vincent, there was John Kelly, and then there was about 17 on the committee that time.
Wow.
16, 17 on the committee. We used to have the meetings up in Tommy Lawler's pub at the Market Square.
Which bar was that now?
A little beside the bank.
Oh, right, okay, the railway house then.
Yeah. We even often talked about digging a tunnel out and you know about going to the bank. Never got around to it anyway. But there used to be about, God, there was some crowd of that committee.
And when did you start the competitions? When do you remember competitions starting to kick off?
Well, we started off, for the club competitions there, we started them off. It wasn't long after that, like we started off having an odd competition.
Right.
And then, I suppose the first the serious competition, the RDA hall runner, on a beautiful summer's evening, and I won that with 4 big trout. Caught me 10 minutes down below the mill, 4 or 5 big trout. And then the following year they run another one. And I fished the island that night, and there was a weir pool right where the weir is.
Yeah.
I had 23 trout coming out of that.
Go away.
And there was a crowd of lads over at the back of the Ivy Leaf, and sure they threw all their bags together to beat me. She let me anyway. I never said nothing. I took it on.
Took it on the chin.
I took it on the chin and walked away.
Yeah. That's all.
But I got second now with anyway. I'd have had them 2 little trophies. I don't know where they're gone now.
Yeah, they were. I remember those trophies. One was an old clock, and one was a big tall with a silver and blue thing. I can remember that from my childhood. I can vaguely remember thinking back now to the night you brought them home. I can remember Mum bringing me down to the bridge and sitting on the bridge waiting for you to come in to register. And that would have been in the 80s, like, you know, it would have been in the 80s.
Poor old, that night on the island, poor old Paul Laffin was there. He stood beside me all night, looking at me. Couldn't believe it.
It was a great club, like, you know, the club has great tradition there in competition fishing.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think in some ways it was a bit ahead of itself.
Yeah.
You know, with other, say, Leinster clubs and stuff like that, there was a lot of competition anglers there, a lot of very classy anglers there, a lot of very innovative anglers there. You know, John Keogh, Lockie Kinsler,
right,
Pat Denton, Noel Shields, one of the best fly tyers this country's ever seen, and unrecognised. You know, these were very innovative anglers, and you know, they all came through Ratram Trout anglers.
Kelly brothers there, Jimmy,
John and Jimmy, absolutely,
and Willie.
Yeah.
Has been in England now for no amount of years. He's been in England,
right?
But he was a fabulous fly man.
Right.
You know, he was fabulous. The
river really was the heart and soul of that community, and there was a big community emphasis there on fly fishing and that river. And I suppose, you know, when the opportunity came, I think in 91, as far as I'm correct now, and I stand to be corrected, I always do stand to be corrected on the show, but, you know, I think 91 was one of the, if not the first, taffy interprovincial championships ever to be brought to Leinster.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Definitely. There might be another All-Irelands, because back in 91, and prior to 91, there was 2 All-Irelands held in Ireland. You know, you had the interprovincials and you had the Open Championships, which is the Liam something Cup, which is still on the go today. But in 91, there was 2 All-Ireland Championships. One came to Ratram and one was held somewhere else. But I think Ratram was the first Leinster club to host an All-Ireland interprovincial championships. And of course, congratulations, you were the first Leinster man to ever win an Interpro championships.
There was another championships that was held, and I mentioned to the people after, and they never remember it, over in Kildare, a Leinster championships was held.
Nationals or Leinsters?
Leinsters.
Right, there was Leinsters, but not Nationals.
As far as I know, Eugene Fagan won it with 1 trout. We fished a Liffey.
Right.
And it was in the middle of July. It was in July, there wasn't 2 buckets of water in it.
Right.
And the beaches at age, and all that was in it was salmon park.
Yeah. Eugene's probably watching, so Eugene will correct us on that if we're wrong. But it was probably, Ratram was probably the first national, though.
I'm nearly sure it was Eugene Fagan that won it. We went into a bar, and we had the sandwiches and all in the bar, and I'm nearly sure Eugene Fagan came in with 1 trout and he won.
Right. Yeah, he's a good angler.
Yeah.
But it was, I think 91 was the first real All-Ireland. And of course you won it. You were the first Leinster man to win.
It was the big.
How big was the 91 All-Ireland for Ratram Trout anglers and the Avonmore River?
It was fabulous. Sure, geez, it was fabulous. And then for me to win it, like, was fantastic, you know. And
there was a lot of hype around the town, and a lot of
hype around it. And sure, Terry Willers and all them lads. Dan Marley was the competition secretary.
That's right.
You know, Dan, the way he could talk things up, like he was a salesman anyway. So you know, that's why he was selling fish.
Terry done his cartoon stuff. We saw his cartoon stuff there earlier on. Some of his stuff, but you know, he done a big presentation that night at the prize giving and stuff, and it went on for the whole weekend, I think.
Yeah. That was great.
It was a big boost for the club.
Oh,
big,
really.
A lot of exposure for the river, like, you know, and the level of difficulty for the river, you know. So to go into that day, then, what sort of memories have you got of that day, or how did the whole day pan out for you from start to finish? You know, even leading into that championships, leading into the 91 All-Ireland, you know, you knew the All-Ireland was coming. You were fishing fairly well for 10 years coming up to it. You obviously fancied your chances. Home river, home water, All-Ireland championships was there for the taking.
But that day, as my mind made up, I was going to travel the water and find the fish.
Right.
And once I found the fish, I knew they were coming.
Did you have a preference? Back then, what way was the draw worked?
Well, the draw was worked. As far as I know, the river was split in 3. And I would have preferred down in the bottom in Avondale.
Everyone wants Avondale,
Yeah, Avondale. So I was drawn upriver with Pat Denton. And then there was 3 or 4 Cork men, Munster men up there, and a couple of Connacht men up there.
Right.
Split.
When you say upriver, where you talk Claravale?
Starting at Claravale Bridge.
Right.
And fishing to the mill.
Jesus, that's a lot of war.
Yeah, fishing to the down to the weir, like.
Yeah.
You stopped at the weir. That's where you stopped. And I knew that day upriver hadn't been fishing that well. And I knew the further I went down, the closer I got to the mill, I had a great chance of getting a bundle of trout.
Right.
And I travelled the river quick. I went down the river, I slipped and I fell in. I got the trout wet to the skin. I'll never forget that. I lost me a few sandwiches and everything had in it. And with one of them deep holes coming down into the woods there. And I went on then, and then I come down by Crowleyburn. And I tried that pool there at Crowleyburn, and there was nothing But they're very comical trout there anyway, because I think it's only in the evening you will get them. So I went on down then to the next pool, nice straight, and all going down along, I was peeping in, and next thing I seen the shoulder trout in it. I mean, Jesus, I am right. Had me flies up the riff flies and all. I went way down, went down river, and got in at the very turn below. And I come up, got into the middle of it, I come up, I didn't care, the water was up to my waist, I didn't care about getting wet.
Right.
You know, but I was intending getting these anyway. Jeez, I come up along and I definitely had, I might have only had 2 flies on, but I definitely had the hare's ear on the point anyway. And then I had another little fly. It could have been a partridge, or it could have been a Greenwell spider. Because the Greenwell spider was
great fly in the Avonmore.
That was a great fly in the Avonmore.
Great fly anywhere.
Greenwell's glory on the Avonmore. Big Greenwell's glory, even the size 12s. Jeez, they used to murder. Yeah. They used to murder. But we got, anyway, that day I got up to the and I was casting up river and just moving slightly on up along, not disturbing anything. And Jesus, next thing I was in, and that was it, that was the start. At 15 or 16 trout straight.
You're probably fishing maximum.
Oh, it's
£6 or something.
Could have been 8 or 10 pounds. I'll tell you the truth now, because
there you go.
we're never going to get away.
Yeah.
No, Barney had a snips with them or something.
To cut the barbs off.
Cut the barbs off. But anyway, geez, I got 50, I think it was 15 I got, and I got to come down and out the river. I said, that's that now anyway. Yeah. And I knew because I said, was any man going to bring in any more? I have
a vague memory, I think it was 17 you ended up with that day.
Could have been 17.
Yeah, I have a vague memory that it was 17. As there was a video produced, but unfortunately we weren't able to get our hands on the video, folks. If I ever get my hands on it, I will put it up on the stream.
But the only thing the Munster men won that day was the overall.
That's right, Munster team won the overall. Yeah. And actually it was a Claheen man that came second, John Daly, and it was a Cork man from Mallow, a friend of ours. I was actually coached a few of these young lads on international teams. Dennis Berry was actually third on the day. Yeah. But Munster won the team event that day as well. Yeah. And I suppose what an achievement for Leinsterman, to win his first national, and to win, to be the first Leinsterman ever to win a taffy interprovincial. It's an amazing achievement. I know how proud I am of picking up my interprovincial on the Avonmore and the home river. To win on your home water is magnificent. To win on the Avonmore is another level altogether, because of the difficulty level of that river. It's right at the top. But since then, since the 90s, Dad, and since then, how much change, or over the decades, you're going back to the 60s, 70s even, over the decades, how much change have you seen in that river, or what's really been the impact? What's impacted the river most over those years?
Well, I suppose with the floods, there's down below the foxhole there used to be a little stream running in around there.
That's right,
and it was a great spawning place, because there was a couple of deep holes in there under holly trees, and trout used to get down there and spawn. But then with all the floods, that got closed off, built up, and it was never, should have been reopened, right? But it wasn't anyway. So other than that, the river never changed a lot at all. Now, the old footstick, that was taken away. There was 2 of them taken away.
Yes.
And other than that, never changed a whole lot. Then the mill race was kind of, and that was the whole feeding. That's where the main feeding spot was, on that river.
Of course, the Avonmore is a highly acidic river, so it doesn't get a great abundance of fly hatches or feed. And that's why the running trout were so small, even though they're still... Yeah,
but that time, they say, there was a great fly hatch on it.
Okay.
They could change from month to month.
Right, go away.
Red spinners and ginger quills and ginger.
You won't see any of those today.
You won't see any of them today.
And yet the Avonmore is not running through an agricultural part of the country. It's not that there's excessive agriculture. It's all forestry. It's all mountain. It's all valleys and gorges. So
but then you see the forestry, I suppose the way they planted the trees and planted all these little spruce down the
pines.
The river, pines. And they have done the river no favours.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but then they've always been a great asset to the club. We've always had the fishing on the lands.
The forestries, of course, have always given the fishing. Yeah, how many miles of river does Rathdrum trout anglers actually can have to their credit?
Well, they have from Lara to to the meetings of the waters, or below the meetings.
Below to the White Bridge.
Yeah, yeah.
Best part of 30 Mile River.
Yeah.
And it's a very active club. It's a very welcoming club.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of work has gone into that club over the years.
But then back that time, like, and there'd be a committee meeting there every month. There'd be a committee meeting, and there'd be 16 or 17 lads there to sit down, and everything would be talked about in the club. Everything what was going to be done for the next month. And we'd all meet up in the evening instead of, you know.
It was a really social outlet back then.
It was a big social outlet. A really big social outlet, yeah.
I think clubs nowadays are losing that kind of ethos a little bit.
And clubs are falling away. You know, since all these phones and all this texting and our community, it's done away with a lot of that.
Yeah, the
members
social.
meeting members. Done away with the social end of it, you know. Yeah.
So I suppose heading into someone that's watching this now and saying, geez, I've got to get up and fish that river next year. I've never fished it, or I haven't fished it in donkey's years and I want to go back to it. What sort of advice for someone with your decades of experience and you know, of that river, what's the couple of little gems that you throw out there of someone that wants to go and fish the river next season?
Well, first of all, I'd walk the river, say you were going to fish in the mill down. I'd walk down that river and I'd just stand back and study the pools.
Yeah.
And see is there any trout moving, and you know what I mean. And especially if a sunny day, you'll always get a certain place where you look in and you can see trout in the water.
Yeah.
And do this, you know, walk the river, study your water first, and then get in and fish it.
A lot of places for trout to hide in that river.
Oh yeah. There's 2 million and one places for trout to hide in it now. You know,
yeah,
but
we know that.
You get the one spot. That's all you want.
Where they're exposed or where they're out.
Yeah.
It's just the same as your All Ireland win. Just find that one spot.
Find that one spot.
Yeah.
But back that time it was unreal the trout that was in that river. Like, there were millions of them in it. And so was the Aughrim River.
All those sister rivers, they're fantastic rivers.
And the Aughrim River, it died with the Rathrum River.
Right.
At the same time, Hurricane Charlie.
Yeah.
It just took everything ahead of it and just shoved it out.
Shoved them all out. Nothing could survive that.
Bowlers and everything that was in it.
Yeah. She could even walk down that time when the new footstick bridge that what was his name? Your man, that celebrity that time came down and opened with us.
Oh yeah.
What was his name? It wasn't Derek Davis. Derek Davis. But I remember going down after Hurricane Charlie and the Irish Jays were wrapped around the trees.
That's right.
30, 40 foot high in the air.
Yeah.
Big oaks. Wrapped around them. Like, and these Irish Jays were 2 foot deep.
They were 2 foot deep, by 12 inches, and they were wrapped around it like a sally.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
The of a sally.
And that's what Hurricane Charlie did to that river.
Unbelievable,
So no trout could survive that. Like.
No.
So anyway, look at the one thing I'd say: the Avonmore River has potential to recover a lot more than say Midland rivers because there is no farm and there's no agricultural to its banks. It's all forestry. It is a nature preserve. So I think in years to come, the Avonmore River could be a real gem in this country. And I think the more anglers that are on it and fishing it, the more eyes and ears we have on the ground, and the more people that say join the likes of the Avonmore trout anglers or the Rathrum trout anglers. It's a very sociable club. I know that from my experience of 30 odd years.
After the Hurricane Charlie, that was gone and went right through it, and that was gone and done. And we were thinking then, what way would we get stock back into the river? And I was suggesting down at the foxhole there, where that river went in around, put 2 floodgates either side of that, and flood.
All right.
And put fingerlings of brown trout in there. And to be actually in the river water we go through, to be immune to that water, like, and they keep them until they were half a pound or that.
And then release them around. Kind of a hatchery.
Yeah, a hatchery, and release them back up the river. But it was talked about for months, but it fell by the wayside.
Never came through.
Unfortunately, it did.
And of course, the 91 All Ireland was your only success on the river. You had a couple of Leinster championships there on the river, and you had a 5th place in 2004, which we're going to talk about in a few moments, folks. I won't go into too much detail because that's one of our next All Irelands on the list. We're covering the 5 All Irelands tonight on the list, but in 2004, you're 5th place, and you managed to represent your country, which is a great honour for any angler. You represented your country in Poland and the River San, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, after the 91 All Ireland, I was rang and asked to go to Italy.
Right.
In which I obligingly said yes. I didn't hesitate in saying yes. And Jimmy Kelly rang me up 2 nights after And he says, I've £450 collected for you already.
Right, yeah.
And then unfortunately I got the word that I wasn't on the team.
Right. Well, back then it was a different selection process.
Different selection.
Then it is now, and that's...
Yeah, that's it. That was water under the bridge anyway.
Yeah.
I don't say any more about it. But going back then to the year I qualified for Czechoslovakia.
Poland.
Yeah, that was a good day's fishing, sure. And I was fishing beside you that day.
That's right, yeah.
On the same stretch.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that competition now in a few minutes, folks.
And
we pulled that one out of the bag, didn't we?
We did. Because you had been in the hole and you got 6 through and you went off, and I got into the hole after and I got 5 through.
Yeah, well, that's the way. You know, you got to leave a few behind, like.
Yeah.
For whoever's coming in after.
Thanks very much anyway, Peter.
You're very welcome. It was an enjoyable trip, Dad. It was an enjoyable trip.
Very enjoyable trip.
Yeah. All right, look at that. I'm not going to hold you up any longer. Thanks so much for joining the show. We're going to try and get you back on in a couple of months' time, maybe for another bit of a chat about different kinds of styles of fly fishing rivers. Yeah. But great to have you on the show with us tonight. Great to talk about your 91 All-Ireland. Congratulations. Yeah. It was a great honour, you know, for any man to win an All-Ireland, but to be the first Leinster man to win a Taffy Inter-Pro in his home river was a fantastic achievement, and you know, it's one that will last forever.
It didn't put a chip on my shoulder because I went to the river every evening.
Yeah.
You know, I always come out with trout. But it was a great day's fishing. I remember every minute of it. Like. That's
brilliant.
I'm sure there's an awful lot of men gone since.
And at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a day's fishing.
That's just all it is,
a day's fly fishing. Yeah, and great memories.
Some days you'll hook them and more days you won't.
That's it, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Hopefully next Sunday up in Laois.
Tomorrow in Laois, Dad. Tomorrow we'll be in Laois. We'll be in Laois tomorrow. Yeah, we'll be in Laois tomorrow morning, folks, and we'll be battling another Leinster final. Yeah, side by side. Okay, Dad, look, we're going to leave it there and move on. I'm going to get back over to the device there now. I'm going to get that out of my chair and I'm going to get back into that chair unless he wants to run the rest of the show. But there we go, folks. Thanks a million to Dad. Tom Driver, 91 All-Ireland champion.
Thanks,
and thanks a million for joining the show and really appreciate your contribution.
Keep it low key, keep it softly spoken, with no strings tying you to me. I'm happy in your company with no emotion, 'cause my love deserves to be free. I never wanna look at a house in the garden, I never wanna lock you down. I know you're not mine, it's just my turn, but we can still have fun for now.
There we have it, folks. That was an interview there with my good old dad, Tom Driver, 91 All-Ireland champion. Hope you enjoyed it. Great to see all the comments. Great to see everyone enjoyed the chat. Special hello there to Colette Kelly. Colette's on with us there tonight. Colette is another Rathdrum lady. Her dad, Jimmy Kelly, you heard Dad mention him, and her uncle, John Kelly, were founder members of the club. I remember Jimmy Kelly growing up as a boy, and Jimmy was the mainstay of the club. He was the secretary of the club for years and years and years, and a fantastic gentleman, fantastic patron to Rathdrum trout angling. And we had some great trips over the years down to Claheen, down to Breda Morns. Colette, I was only talking to Breda the other day, and great trips around the country fishing with Jimmy and Pat and all the lads. Some great men came from the club, so it was great to hear some of the stories there as well and see people's reactions. So I hope you all enjoyed it. We're going to move on now, and we're actually going to tie that Greenwell's Glory from the 91 All-Ireland that Dad talked about. I got a size 12 hook here in the vice, and it's a Camazan B175. Back then you would have had that big barb on it, and as Dad said, the trout would have needed snips to get away from it. So we're going to tie it on one of those hooks. Thanks Dylan, thanks everybody for their comments. On that I'm going to tie a Primrose Silk. Okay, Primrose tying silk. This is simpler fly wax thread. Okay, it's a Primrose for tying the Greenwells. I'm going to lash that onto the hook there, and we're going to tie in a bit of a tail, a bit of a Greenwell's tail there. Don't forget we got Eamon Conway coming up in the show in a little while. We're going to talk about the other, that's one All-Ireland. We're going to talk about the other 4 All-Irelands. Well, I'm going to kind of be babbling on a bit about the one I picked up this year. But we're going to talk about the other 3 All-Irelands as we go along, and we still have that interview with Eamon Conway talking about his win in 2016. So I'm going to add in a little bit of a tail there. Of course, we're going over to fish the Leinster Banks tomorrow. over in Leash Angling Centre. A bit of fun. Nice little tail there. Now, the ribbon on this is a really fine gold oval, okay? No brand. Don't have it donkeys years ago, okay? A lot of people use copper wire now, but back in those days it would have been gold oval. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, they got some great stories. You know, I remember growing up with Dad and Colin and Jimmy Kelly and all those anglers, Lockie Kinsley, Pat Denton, Brendan Driver. You know, the stories they had. And I'd often be sitting in a bar with them there drinking a pint, or sitting on a riverbank, or after finishing a bit of a shoot and sitting in the van, and you'd hear these great old stories, and I'd often think to myself, I really should try and get that down on video, some of them stories, something I might try to do down in the future. What I'm doing here now on the Primrose Silk is I'm using a little bit of cobbler's wax. Okay, so I'm going to darken down that primrose with the cobbler's wax. So I'm just working it on the wax, working it on the trade, giving that lovely Greenwell's colour. Just make sure you'll see it as dark as you need it to get as you start massaging it into the thread up and down. Excuse me. Once I'm happy enough, I've got it as dark as I can. Now, of course, you can buy coloured threads nowadays that will match the Greenwell's colour, but you can't beat that old Greenwell's colour of the cobbler's wax. Should be a great day tomorrow, Dennis. Yeah, looking forward to it. Bit of crack, get out and meet a few lads. So I'll just wind up that body now. Great to hear Anthony Bolton on there as well, talking about that, you know, the improvements in the river over the years, that he's seen a better run. Anthony's a local angler there, fishing a lot more regularly than I'd fishing, though I love getting back up as often as I can, but Anthony's on it regularly there, and he's talking, you know, he's saying he's getting good trout off it, and it's great to hear that the river is fishing well. So just forming that nice body up along there, and then I'll take my rib and I'll just rib up that body. Before I do, though, absolutely, Garrett, fresh looking man for someone that's married 50 years. He sure is, and he loves his fishing. My mammy could probably take credit for that, maybe a bit, but yeah, he's a fresh looking man, all right. Loves his fishing. We've had some great, I've been very lucky with myself and Dad. We've had some great trips over the years, and some great old stories of our adventures together. We would have fished together, shot together, played golf together. We worked together for a long time as well. The thing about this particular type of oval tinsel, guys, is that it unwinds a little bit as you wind it, so you got to keep a twist in it. Okay, some of this older stuff. So I keep twisting it as I'm bringing up that body to make sure it doesn't separate, the gold tinsel doesn't separate from the silk core. You can see now we got a nice Greenwell's body. Going to put on a pair of duck slips, wing slips here for a wing. And if you're tying the Greenwell spider, you're just tying that without a tail and without a wing. Just going to tie in a little pair of duck slips. Of course, we covered the wings there a couple of weeks ago, and very good, Jamie. Yeah, the propeller fly from Loch Mask. Yeah, maybe if we do a show on Loch Mask, Jamie, I might do that fly. So a little pair of wing slips sitting nicely on top of that fly, as you can see, as I'll remember from the wing night. Pinch, pull around and pull up, not down to the side. Snip away the waist there. Make sure I don't snip the thread. It's going to happen. Now, some great flies, I remember back in the day fishing them. Used to go down to Power Sound there, and you'd pick up a few flies. I still remember the first fly rod I bought off Jerry Power. It was one of those blue Shakespeare black fly, I think it was called. And you know, you go and you buy a couple of flies off Jerry Power there before I was tying and stuff, and you'd go down to Avonmore. But I remember the Badger Quill being an absolute cracker of a pattern down there as well. I think we've tied the Badger Quill on the show before, but we might get to it again, not tonight. But a little bit of a Greenwell's hackle going on here now on the front. 2 or 3 turns on that there is ample. Just waggle that thread. Make sure you don't trap in that wing or go near that wing. Get in there and snip away your waist. And just hold it all back. Get it all back then. Taper them back nicely and form your little primrose head. Lovely wet fly. Still very effective today, folks. Excuse me. Still very effective today. You can never forget the wet flies. Even though nymphing is probably the most productive way, but there is still days when the likes of that Greenwell spider will outfish a nymph. And for that, and he's at 91 All Ireland, it was the fly that took him to glory. So there you go, nice little Greenwell's glory tied there, lovely little fly, really effective. And say still today, I still have a couple of Greenwells in the box. Maybe not as many Greenwell's glories as I should, but definitely Greenwell spiders. Lovely little fly, simple fly to tie, and really super effective. So moving on from there, I'm going to go to my notes now and see where I am on notes. So moving on from then, say 91. After the success of 91 All Ireland Championships, the Avonmore and Ratrum trout anglers again decided to hold a 94 an All Ireland. I was allowed, thanks Keith. Keith Jemison's on there from Wicklow. Myself and Keith went to school together, and the brothers, long time ago, Keith. Hope you're keeping well. But myself and Keith fished that river a few times as well, Keith, if my memory serves me correct. And probably in around the time of the 94, because I was 16 when I fished my first All Ireland Championships. I was 16 years of age. And we fished the All Ireland in Ratrum. That's a picture of me there when I was 16, young boy. A lot of water under the bridge since then. But, getting the experience of fishing the 1994 All Ireland was fantastic, getting me a real taste for competition fishing. That picture was taken for the Evening Herald. Thanks, Dennis and Kevin. But the Evening Herald covered that competition, and he took some great photographs. And in the post from Colin Murphy was the name of the guy, the photographer at the time, who was down on the river for the day. Took that picture and kindly posted to me, and I still have it today. It's a fabulous picture. I have it. I actually nicked it out of my parents' house a couple of weeks ago up in Wexford and brought it down with me. But it was the 94 All Ireland. It was won by Richie Rowe of Care in County Tipperary. Richie won it that year. That was the first All Ireland I fished, and I say it was a great event and fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks, Frankie. Fantastic event for the club that time. Then moving on from there, it was going to be another 10 years before Ratrum held an All Ireland, and it was in 2004 the All Ireland was held. The winner on that day was Michael Drynan. Michael Drynan won the river that year, or the competition that year. He had a massive bag of trout. I think back then it was into 2 sessions, and he had something like 25. No, it wasn't actually. It was still full days, and you still could go from bridge to bridge. But I remember halfway through the day, a friend of mine ringing me or texting me. Thanks, Dave. Texted me and said, Drynan, Michael has 25, I think, or something like that. So he absolutely really did the job on that river. Back then, nymph fishing was only coming into it, and Michael was ahead of the game there, and he did really well and took the All Ireland that year. But Dad mentioned it. We came 4th and 5th that year in the 2004 All Ireland, and we went on a trip to Poland for the European Championships. It was a fantastic trip. But it was going to be 2 years later then, in 2016, when a young lad from Dundalk came down, Eamon Conway, and attacked the river is the best way of describing it. Anyone that knows Eamon and his ability to fish rivers, he attacked that river and he took his first All Ireland win. Indeed, that year Eamon Conway won every river event in the country. He won the Taffy Leinster rivers, he won the Taffy National rivers, he won the ITFA rivers, and he won the ITFA Nationals. He had all 4 trophies at one time, only angler ever to do it. A few people have came close, but Eamon was the only person to achieve all 4 in the 1 year. He was on fire that year, and as we know, he's won plenty of more competition since. But Eamon Conway from Tame Fly Rods, up there in Dundalk, fantastic angler. You can see him there fishing the Avonmore. He came on and we had a little bit of a chat there about Eamon. Now I'm going to be back on tying a few more flies for you. Going to be back on tying a few more flies for you there now in a second, folks, and probably my number 1 fly from the Avonmore, the All Ireland in 2023. But we're going to have a little bit of chat with Eamon about his win in 2016 and his experiences of the Avonmore River. So enjoy a bit of an interview, folks, and I'll see you back here again in a few moments for another bit of fly time. Eamon, thanks a million for coming on the show tonight and joining in the conversation with us. You were on with us last year and we're doing really well, so it's great to have you back on here. How was everyone up in Dundalk?
Everybody's good, yeah. Thanks for having us. I love coming on to your show. We're all good up here in Dundalk, yeah.
How's the rod building business going?
Yeah, we're going all right now. We're going okay, I have to say now. There's rods going all over the world, so we're happy enough, you know.
Brilliant, right? You're reaching far places now, are you? How far is
Far
the
place,
furthest rod gone?
I give you a laugh. We sent one to Japan there lately.
Oh, fantastic.
It's crazy. So that's some distance, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
but
Well done, congratulations.
internet makes the
Hard work, Eamon. You know, hard work pays off and you work hard at your business.
That's it,
And
absolutely.
it's a credit to you. But I suppose the reason why we invited you along tonight, Eamon, you know, tonight's all about the Avonmore River. Most competition anglers in the country would have had some experience, not all good experiences, of competing on the Avonmore River. And we're looking back, you know, the Avonmore River has held a lot of All-Irelands over the years, and they all have their stories, their tales. And I've been in a few of them. I know you've been in a few of them. But you won one of your All-Irelands, because I think you've more than one.
That's right.
But you definitely won the Taffy All-Ireland River Provincials on
That's
the
right,
Avonmore.
yeah. 2016.
What year was that, Eamon?
2016.
2016, right.
Yes. Yes.
I
remember.
Is that the same year? Is that the same year you had every river title in the 1 year?
That's right. It was. Yeah. It was that.
You had the Taffy. You had the Taffy All Ireland Seniors. You had the ITFA All Ireland Seniors. You had the Leinster Taffies and the ITFA Leinster in the 1 year.
Yeah, that was some year. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think there's too many people that have done that.
No, I don't think so. No, I think there's a couple of near misses now, but I don't think there has.
I think you're near one.
You know.
DJ Byrne came close one time. I think Brian Larkin came close. But I think I'd say you're out on your own there now.
Well, yeah. Yeah, geez, I tell you what, I don't know what happened to me in the last few years, you know, but I tell you,
we all get hot spells, Eamon. Gee, because Christ, you're freaking.
That's it too.
You know,
but tell you, the Avonmore River, yeah, it always has a place in my heart, so it has, you know.
Yeah.
It really, really does. And I always said that the Avonmore was good to me. You know, it always has been good to me. Saying that, not this year, it wasn't going to be this year, but it generally it is, you know. I love that kind of river.
That kind of tough, hard fishing.
Yeah, but do you know what, Peter? It's a pure wild river. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you go to some of the rivers that are around the country and they're dredged and stuff like that. That river's just wild.
Yeah,
you know, and it's just
there's all pictures ever under.
Yeah, and you know, it's just made up. You know yourself, you obviously know better than I do, but it just comes from all over. It's just the water that lands in Wicklow just drains into that river, and you know, it's just wild. Hey, it is. It is a pure wild river. Yeah, actually, Trout and Salmon came over and done an article on the Avonmore one time. A good few years ago, Mike Weaver came over, and that was his title. Wild. He came out for 2 days fishing with me and Mark. So for some reason he called it Wild in Wicklow, the title of the article. I don't know if it was because the two boys he was with or because the countryside, but anyway, he had a wild time. Probably a bit of both.
A bit of both, I'd say, yeah. Absolutely. So Eamon, taking back to that All-Ireland win, you know, it's no easy feat winning All-Ireland. It takes a lot of factors to come together to take an All-Ireland title. You know, when for your All-Ireland that you won, you know, what sort of things, say, approaching the Avonmore that day, you know, what sort of things had to go right for you on that day to get over the line? You know, just I suppose leading back, so you do need your right setups. Like from what I recall that day, I had a Euro infant rod. I think it was a 10'6" rod. I think 3 weight that day, and I had also 9'5" weight for a dry dropper and dry fly. And that was my go-to. But I recall that year the All Ireland was cancelled and it had to be rescheduled. That's right, because there was a flood in it, yeah, and it was held late September. Yeah, and what do you call it? So the river or the new date was set, and we went, and the water, I don't think it was too high, it was just flowing well, you know. And I like it when it's like that because, you know, you can get in on top of the trout. A trout is sort of a funny thing where if there's plenty of water in the river, they don't mind you being in beside them. But if it's really, really low, they're so spooky. You know what I mean? It just, and that river, it's. Would you say, Eamon, there's a difference between rat-drum trout and say a general run of trout in the likes of other rivers? Do you think that breed of trout in the Avonmore is a unique breed. Do they think would you think they have any particular behaviours or mannerisms or that you would say would be kind of unique to that river?
Well, I suppose their size is definitely they're a stunted kind of trout because they
Yeah,
lack
yeah.
river, you know. But they're just a funny trout because I remember when I was practicing this year, I was going to my usual places, you know, where you'd expect to pick up a trout, and I wasn't getting any, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here, you know?
Yeah.
And I was getting them in other places. I was getting them more in flats and stuff like that there. It's just it's a tricky kind of river. I found it tricky this year because it was so low, you know.
It was very low. Yeah.
Very, very low. But I suppose the thing is with that river too, and you know yourself, because it's natural bedrock and stuff like that there's wee divots and big boulders and stuff. Like I see myself standing on one side of a rock, landing the fly on the other, hoping that there's a trout tucked in behind it. Now, hopefully he couldn't see me. I'd say he might have felt the vibration, but usually that's the places I find in that river that they're hiding, you know. And then I remember one instance where I'd done that there, put the fly in just the other side of the rock. I didn't get him. And when I went to walk around the rock, there he was. He shot out in front of me. You know what I mean? And that's the beauty about that river. I think there's so many hiding places in that river. Like
that's it, yeah.
Through it. And it's lovely. And next, you know, you go into a hole and you'll be up to your waist and then you're back out of it again, you know, within another step, you know, and those wee hiding places. And I like the Avonmore River because you have to work for it. There's a lot of work in that river. It's not just like going into a flat and throwing your drives, you know, sort of, I suppose, in a systematic way. You know, in the Avonmore River, you have to pick out the pockets, find where they're hiding. You know what I mean? And that's what I like about that river.
And if you were preparing, so when you're preparing, we'll go back to your All-Ireland in a few moments, but just want around this kind of trail of order. So when you're preparing yourself, Eamon, you know, the All-Ireland's on next week in the Avonmore or whatever, you know, what sort of way you preparing yourself, your setups, approaching a river at that kind of difficulty level, you know?
Yeah, well, I had for the dry fly and the things, I super fine tip it, like it's down to 0.08, which is very fine, you know. And that was actually coarse man's fluorocarbon. It wasn't even something you'd get for you know, for fly fishing, you know, so it was that fine. I was using that kind of thing also then just with the nymphs. I was back using my perdigons. I love the perdigons, you know. They sink like stones, and that's, believe it or not, that's what I was using the time I won it, was using perdigons. Yeah. They
can be effective on a river like that when you need fast punch and power of those nymphs to get down into the pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. But saying that, this year I was using a sort of bushy little pattern with a bit of violet through it, and it was working for me under dry dropper now, I have to say.
Right.
You know, it was working for me. The perdigons were sinking too fast this year. The water was that low, you know.
Water was that low,
yeah. But if I was going this year, I'd have me, I suppose the usual setup: dry fly and 2 nymphing rods, and I would have one on the bank.
Knee pads and bubble wrap.
The whole
lot to protect you. It's a very slippery river.
It's like an ice rink some days, and you have to be very careful in it, you know. But in terms of setups, definitely nymphing rod, a dry fly rod, and then a spare nymphing rod, just in case, you know yourself, last 10 minutes you get a knot, just throw that rod in the bank, grab the other one, and off you go, you know. That's sort of how I do it.
Would you see fishing a river like that, Eamon, as, you know, fishing a river like the Avonmore, that kind of difficulty level would be the wave, the foliage, you know, the rocks, the holes, everything is just can be so frustrating. A river can eat you up. Could you see fishing a river like that improving your skill set? Like, you know, is that a river, say, competition anglers in Ireland should be aspiring to fish more regularly to sharpen up, to get better, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I'd agree, because, like, for talk's sake, if you had no obstacles in the river, you know, you'd no need to you would have no need to be accurate. Do you know what I'm saying? Where if you have your obstacles in the river, you need to get that fly where it matters. You know, because you're not going to get the fish out of it.
Absolutely, yes. And especially in the Avonmore,
especially the Avonmore, because if the boulders are submerged or whatever, that's a small pocket. You can't actually see. You know, you can only see the stone, but you can't really see the formation of the water underneath it. You know, and the trout could be just sitting there. And you need to target those areas, yourself.
Right. So that's what you're looking for when you're fishing like the Avonmore, is you're looking for that kind of telltale sign of between a rock or beside a rock or behind a rock or in front of a rock where there might be that bit of depth.
Bit of depth and a bit of cover. Like the trout will literally hide anywhere. I remember looking, there was a small river in the Wicklow Mountains one time. I was up doing a hill walk, and I seen this trout rise. And I'm not joking you, Peter. This river was tiny, absolutely tiny. It was actually a tributary of the Liffey, way up the top end there in Bride. And I went down to investigate, and I couldn't see the trout. And sort of more and more I looked into the river, all I could see was this small tail sticking out between two stones. And that's where to be hiding, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I born and bred on the river, the Avonmore. Like there's if you're down rooting around the rocks, there's times where you can shove your entire arm up underneath a rock, and it's all water, it's all cavity in there, it's all running water. Like and trout go literally live up in under that rock, and you could walk over and walk past them, and that trout wouldn't even see daylight.
That's right. And it's funny because I recall on the second session there in 2016, I remember doing my first sort of run of the beat.
Yeah, any memory of what beat it was, Eamon, or what part of the river?
Was
it the upper part or the lower part? Do you think, care?
Where was I? It was, well, say for the second session, this particular story in the second session, I was down in Avonmore, and I remember I was down, do you know where they built that new place? Well, I was sort of, you drive down the track, and I had to go upstream.
Yes.
And I remember fishing the first part of the beat, and I caught nothing, and I got a couple of fish at the top. But in the second run through, I got a couple of fish, and I was sort of wondering what I'd done to get those fish. And I think I might have spooked them the first time round into the lies where I got them. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I didn't, there was no indication, or I didn't miss anything the first time through, It's a funny wee river, and there's so many hiding places. You just have to work hard for them in that river.
Yeah, so taking your time and attention to detail is crucial there, isn't it?
That's it,
How many fish did you end up with the All-Ireland the year you won, Eamon?
I give you a laugh. I had only 14 fish for my day. I had 2 7s.
I had only 1 fish for the whole day, so you were 13 better than me anyway.
But it's
for
crazy,
that one anyway. Huh?
Yeah, I remember there in 2014, I came second in it. I think that morning I had a 10 and a 3, that day, and that was in spring. And do you know what? The fishing was very good. I remember actually there was Leinster there recently on it. I think I'd 15 fish in one of the.
That's the one Brian Larkin won. That's the one Brian Larkin won, and Mark was second. That was the last Leinster held there. We just before COVID.
Yeah,
that was
that's right.
Before COVID, and I think Brian Larkin had 21 fish in the morning.
That's right. Brian had a great day.
He fished down in Avondale.
That's right. He was just below me, I think, because I was saying, geez, like 15 fish. That's great, you know what I mean? And I was asking everybody else, how'd you get on? And I seen Brian, well, how'd you get on? I think he's 19 or 20. I'm like, holy gee, But that down there fish is very good.
It can be. The river's kind of, we nearly divide it in half, like almost two different rivers. Once you're standing on Rathrum Bridge, anything north of Rathrum Bridge, the fishing is just very different to anything south of Rathrum Bridge. It's amazing. I know what's in the land or what's in the bedrock or what it is, but like getting from Rathrum up is difficult fishing. Now, I've had some of my best days in the Avonmore upriver, up into where it's Clara Vale and stuff, and I've got some really good trout over the years, but it's just very difficult fishing. Where if you go down south of the bridge, down towards Avondale and on down into Voca, there's a lot more quantity of trout there. You'll get a lot more trout rather than the bigger ones upstream. I don't know what it is. It's definitely like two different rivers.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to know, but it's an amazing river. It's just, it's beautiful. And you know what?
Yeah.
It's like one of those rivers. It's like the Sarka River nearly. It's just all boulder strewn, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's a super river. So you look forward to going back? Yeah, I'm sure we'll get another competition on the Avonmore before the two of us retire anyway.
That's it. Yeah, I tell you what, I'm looking forward to fishing it again. It's always one of those rivers. And I remember the first time I fished it, I said to you before.
How long ago was that?
Oh man, that's probably, it's well over 10 years ago now. And I remember the tour, or not the tourists, but the journalists came.
That's right.
They were doing articles on the river, and we were all down showing them the river. And that was my first time seeing it. I thought it was amazing. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something else. Yeah. Well, look at Eamon. I'm not going to keep you any longer. Thanks very much for coming on and sharing your experiences of the Avonmore River with us, and your All Ireland win. That was your first All Ireland that year, was it?
First All Ireland, yeah.
First All Ireland, and you went on to win the ITFA Nationals straight after that. So,
Yeah.
what an achievement to hold 4 river titles in the 1 year. It hasn't been done in my memory. And I'd say it'll be a long time before anyone ever does it again. So it's a fair achievement to hold up, yeah, fair going. Anyway, okay, I mean, look, I'm going to let you go. Thanks very much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and hopefully,
folks.
Yeah, hopefully see you in the river soon.
Absolutely, looking forward to March, and you never know, we might be back on the Avonmore for Leinster's this spring, Eamon. Could be all to play for there again.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Have a good evening, Eamon. Thanks a million for joining us. Bye.
Good luck.
Here we go, folks. Eamon Conway on there from Ton Fly Rods. Thanks a million, Eamon, for coming on with us. The 2016 champion. Of course, Eamon ended up coming then on the world team with me. I was the captain of the world team in 2018. We went to Trento, Italy for the River Sarka. Eamon qualified for that. Brian Kerr and who else came on? I think it was Eamon Conway, Brian Kerr and Tom Beecher were the 3 anglers that came off the river that year. I captained the team to Italy, and we had a great out trip and made a good shot of ourselves out there. But thanks, Eamon, for coming on and joining us there and give us an insight into how you approach a river like the Avonmore. So, folks, before I finish up, I am going to tie probably my number 1 nymph from the All Ireland. Now, I'm lucky enough to have picked up two River All Irelands over the years, and it is, there is a lot of factors that have to come into any competition to achieve success, and luck is definitely a part of it. You get your lucky breaks and you take them, they fall your way, and the day of the All Ireland in Rathdrum certainly was a bit of luck. I had a plan made out that I was going to fish caddis patterns, and that I was going to fish large flies, and talking about my technique earlier on about tight lining and keeping those flies on the bottom but not in the bottom. But also, a little bit of luck. And I remember the start of the morning session, I got down by the meetings, and there was still a bit of cover on one part of the river, and I decided in the middle of my beat, I was saying, will I fish it now or will I let the sun hit it? Because it was so low, the shade gave me a little bit more cover. So I decided, feck it, you know what, I'll get into the middle of the beat and I'll fish that shaded part first. And lo and behold, I took 8 trout over within the first 20 minutes. I had 8 fish on the scorecard, so I was off to a flyer. And once you get a bit of momentum, it does help an awful lot. But coming into the dying moments of that session, by the way, I have a size 14 Tahoe jig, or size 16 Tahoe jig hook here in the vise, and I got a 3mm copper or gold slotted bead on it. 3mm gold bead on that there, and I've just tied in some number 12 glow bright, and I'm going to do a little tag very similar to the one I did before. You can see I tied on 2 sections there, folded over, left one tag end out the back, and that's what I'm going to pull over when I tie my tag up. But coming into the dying seconds of that competition, I cracked off right up at the very top of my stretch, and I turned around the controller and I said, how much time is left? And I hadn't got a spare rod. I'd used my spare rod, and he said, Peter, you have a minute or less, or you have 2 minutes or less, or something like that, he said to me. And I went, feck it anyway, and I just took out this nymph again. This nymph was already on the cast that broke off, and I had caught fish on this nymph on dry dropper, as well as most of my fish came in the morning on this fly on dry dropper as well as nymphing. And took out another one of these in a 3.5mm, very, very skinny wire, and literally lashed it onto the piece of tippet that was left on the end of my leader, my nymph leader, and just started smashing it into the top, very neck of the run. Just really skinny, fast water, smashing in. I maybe got 4 casts, and then literally the nymph stopped. I hooked the fish, and in the same breath, the controller shouted time, and I turned around and he says, yeah, you struck the fish before I shouted, so the fish counted, and that got me to 13, which won me session. Dave Donovan had 13 in the morning as well, and I just pipped Dave for first. So you need those little bits of luck to go your way, as well as your plan to fall into place. And that kind of kicked me on, and in the afternoon I picked up 3 more fish on a higher stretch up the river. You can see what after happening there now is actually the little bit of globe right, I pulled over. I actually undone. If I was tying this fly commercially or for myself, I would go back and redo it, but I'm not going to hold this up any longer. You know the purpose behind what I do there. Again, tying in the partridge, that nice soft tail, a nice caddisy look. Another caddis, but this one was a treat. This one really just all day long took. I think in the afternoon I got 6 fish. 3 counted, 3 didn't, and they were all on this nymph again. Now, for the body of this one, the dubbing I mixed up for the day, for this particular nymph, is a very dark hare's ear, as you can see it, right? So I got hare's ear in there. I got black deer hair in there. There's a caddis, so you can see the black deer hair coming through. It's a very similar dubbing I'd use to tie in the grayling slayer. Black deer hair in there, and then some really dark grey, almost black, like a natural black, not a dyed black, but a natural black rabbit. And I have a little bit of peacock in there as well, peacock number 46. So I've mixed up those 4 dubbins. I put the deer hair in there, just off cuts of deer hair that have fallen on the desk when I'm doing black muddler heads and stuff like that. I bag it up and put it in, mix it in with your hare's ear, and it gives a lovely, really dark effect, and very good for doing caddis bodies and stuff like that. And of course the famous grayling slayer. When we do our grayling night, we'll talk a bit about that fly. So I'm going to dub this on. So whenever I'm picking out a bit of dubbing, I always make sure I have a little bit of deer hair in there as well. You don't need a whole dose of it, just enough to give 1 or 2 little pieces to the fly. I'm going to dub it on relatively loose, okay? Don't dub it on too tight now. Relatively loose, and start winding up the body. No rib on this one. It's a nice dark nymph. Very caddisy looking. Very good on the Avonmore. Last year. Once I've done that, then I'm going to brush it out. A little bit of deer hair stick out either side. And if you ever pick up a caddis pattern off the bed of a river, it's always got these little twigs and, you know, stuff like that there. And that's what the kind of deer hair resembles, is those little bits of twigs and stuff. You can see it there now, the body. Very caddisy looking, rough and scruffy. And that's exactly the way I like those nymphs for the Avonmore. As a shoulder hackle here, or shoulder dubbing then, what I'm going to do is use a little bit of white. This is white rabbit mixed in with a little bit of fine UV from Sabaya. Okay, you can see the little fleck I have in there. So I'm going to take a little pinch of that. Yes, Declan, I won the first All-Ireland in Kanturk. I don't even know what year. I can't even remember what year. It was 2013, Declan. No, it was 2012, sorry. 2012 I won my first All-Ireland in Kanturk. And then this was the second one. I have the Lakes as well. I got the Lakes in 2010 over in the Corrib. Fishing on the Corrib, I got the Lakes, the All-Ireland Lakes. So lucky enough to have picked up 3 in my time. Just hide a bit of that white rabbit with that mix in behind it. Of course, Kanturk is another great club. Has hosted many great events. There's lots of great clubs around the country. Dundalk Anglers have hosted, you know, the Shore, Cashel Gold, and they held a great All-Ireland recently. The Blackwater, there's been countless All-Irelands on. You know, some fantastic clubs around the country that hold these great competitions, and they're great events. You know, I love them. I look forward to them every year. Not just for the competitive edge that's in me, but because of the social aspect of it, you know, and getting to meet a lot of those anglers you wouldn't meet throughout the year, and fishing different rivers and things like that. You know, they're great events, and then great for the clubs too. It gives the clubs a great boost, you know, financially as well as exposure and things like that, and, you know, and it gets people doing a few bits. It was, Declan, yeah, 2012, because I was saying it was 10 years since the last time I won it this year. But, you know, it was great. It was great competitions and great crack. And fair play to all the clubs that do host these competitions. A lot of work goes into them. And, you know, they're a credit to the clubs. And hopefully plenty more coming down the road. So that's all the flies I have for you tonight, folks. There's a couple of flies. One from Dad's All-Ireland in 91. Thanks very much to Eamon Conway and Tom Driver and my dad for coming on, having a chat. We might get Dad on again. He got such a great response there. We might get Dad on again for a bit of an old chat somewhere along the way. We'll fit in some topic that'll suit him. I hope he's enjoyed those flies. Definitely, if you're going to fish the Avonmore, folks, get up there to Rathdrum and County Wicklow. Check out the Rathdrum Trout Anglers Facebook page. They're very active on their Facebook page. They have a great club there and very reasonable. The likes of those hare's ear caddis that we tie tonight will always catch fish, but please do be careful when you're fishing the Avonmore, as Eamon mentioned there as well. It's a very slippy river, quite a dangerous river at times. If you're unsecure or unsteady on the feet, bring a wading staff or life jacket, and always tell someone where you're fishing. or go with somebody. But a beautiful river to explore, miles and miles and miles of wild countryside and beautiful riffles and holes and pockets, and some amazing trout there to be caught. So do enjoy the Avonmore if you haven't been up there before. Thanks everybody for watching, and as always, thanks a million for all your support here on PescariFly.com. We really do appreciate it. If you need any fly fishing or flight time materials, or anyone's looking for some Christmas presents there, do give us a shout here, and we'll be gladly to give you the best advice we can. Give us a bell. Thanks Liam, thanks Colin, thanks Dennis. See you tomorrow morning. Early morning start, folks, for the Leinster Bank Championships. Check out Pescari Fly. There's going to be some updates throughout the day. I'll give the controllers the phone, and they can shoot some footage across and let you know how we're all getting on tomorrow over in Laois Angling Centre. Looking forward to meeting all the lads. And enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday night. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all next Saturday night for another live show right here at 8:30 p.m. at Pescari Fly. We're still in Nymph in November. You'll catch the topic there during the week. And hi to all our YouTubers for tomorrow. Don't forget, I will do the draw for all these flies Monday or Tuesday and send out the winners all their prizes. Good night, folks. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, everyone, and see you all next Saturday night. Thanks for watching.